Ram Dirt.
Hi, Joe. We will, thank you for putting yourself on mute. We'll get started here in a moment for you.
Terrific, thank you.
All right. Thank you for attending today's Training Tuesday webinar on the Symons Sym-Ply forming system. I am Heidi Rees, which you've heard me in the past. I'm with Dayton Superior's marketing department. Last week, you were introduced to Briston Kohler, our summer intern, and during the Steel-Ply webinar. If you missed that, it is out on our DaytonSuperior.com training product videos, and you can take a listen. So we're excited to introduce this week's topic and speaker, and hope that you're finding these Training Tuesday topics and webinars both useful and enjoyable. They are recorded, as I said, each week for your convenience, and remember that you can pass on to others that might find them beneficial. Again, they're on DaytonSuperior.com/training. There's a link there to them. And just for some housekeeping, as I was saying to Joe, I thanked him for muting. Everybody that comes in is muted on the call so that there's no disturbances while we all listen to the webinar. And if you have any questions, feel free to send them through the chat functionality. And at the very end, I will state those, and Ryan and Tyler, who is sitting here beside me, can answer them if you have any. So, okay. Today, we're going to learn about another Symons forming system called SymPly. So we're going to understand why and when we would use this system, all of its compatibilities with our other systems, as well as core components, and the accessory hardware that goes along with it. So I'm super excited to present Ryan Graham, who is the product manager for Symons Forming. He joined Dayton Superior Symons back in 2020. It was a great year, huh, Ryan? As a product manager, right? He brings both a combined experience of 13 years in product management, product brand and channel marketing, as well as sales. Through those 9 years of product marketing and management, he has spanned multiple industries that include the fastener, key and hanger hardware, customer packaged goods, as well as specialty paper products. He has a master's degree in business administration, as well as a bachelor's degree in marketing and PRISM, which is product information and supply chain management, from the University of Cincinnati. And in addition, he holds certifications in project management and digital marketing for Google Analytics, Google Ads, and Bing Ads. So without further ado, Ryan, help us expand our knowledge of the SymPly system.
Thank you, Heidi. I appreciate that. Very nice introduction. So I appreciate everyone taking the time to join us for this quick 30-minute webinar here today to learn a little bit more about our SymPly clamp forming system. You know, obviously this webinar in this short time frame that we have is designed to highlight some of the very high-level many features and benefits that our SymPly system has to offer to our customer base. We do also offer more in-depth training boot camps. We do have a national sales manager. His name is Chuck Oak, and I believe you can find more information about those boot camps if you're looking for more in-depth training beyond what I shared today in this webinar, available on DaytonSuperior.com. So with that being said, I will jump right into it here. So starting with the many benefits of SymPly, kind of giving you a high-level overview of what you can expect with this system. It is one of the most versatile forming systems in the marketplace today. The system can be utilized on nearly any vertical concrete structure. It can be used with, mid-rise, high-rise buildings, foundations, shear walls, elevators, stair cores, and even column formwork. So it spans quite a bit of end-use applications. The system itself was engineered and designed in imperial dimensions, which for our U.S. customer base is a big deal. Actually saves them a lot of that upfront work where they're having to convert many times other systems from metric to imperial dimensions. So it's kind of a nice little labor efficiency that the SymPly system offers to our customers. In addition to that, one of the big benefits that we believe is very important with the SymPly system is that it's compatible, 100% compatible with our most well-known system in the industry, and that is Steel-Ply, which, as Heidi mentioned, we did a Steel-Ply webinar on last week, and you can check that out. That's available for download on our website as well. But when we say it's 100% compatible, what we mean is you can transition from Steel-Ply to SymPly without any kind of transition hardware. And I'll kind of walk you guys through that and show you how simple it actually is on a later slide in this webinar. SymPly also allows you to have up to 1,500 pounds of concrete pour pressure per square foot, which is a big deal. That's actually higher than our Steel-Ply system. But with that being said, there's pros and cons to that. Our SymPly panels are made out of a much higher strength 80 KSI steel frame, and that 80 KSI steel frame is actually slightly heavier. So the trade-off is our SymPly as a system weighs about 8 pounds per square foot versus our Steel-Ply system that you may have listened in on last week, which weighs about 5 pounds per square foot. But I do want to make it clear, at 8 pounds a square foot, that is still very lightweight and definitely light enough to actually handset this system with your construction crew on the job site. The primary attachment method for the SymPly system are clamps. We call them Sym clamps. I'll go into a little more detail on those as well later on in the webinar. The SymPly system does require the use of ties. The tie systems that are used with SymPly are taper ties and she bolts. And again, I'll have a specific breakout slide later on that gets more into the details and the weeds a little bit more on the tie options with this particular system. Okay, here. So moving on to some SymPly basics real quick. So I kind of thought it was important to start out by giving you guys a high-level overview of the most important component part in any forming system, which is the panel, and kind of some of the basic nomenclature, or as I call it, panel anatomy. And you can see the SymPly panel, as I've mentioned already, consists of an 80 KSI steel frame. It has a plywood face sheet to it, as you can see from the images on the slide there. The steel frame internal parts consists of what we call cross members. As you can see, they run both vertically and horizontally across the frame. The cross members have numerous cutouts along them. So those cutouts are designed to accept attachment from all of our various accessory hardware that you'll learn more about on subsequent slides here as well. Okay. Additionally, you'll see there's also these square or box-shaped cutouts on the panels. Those are the tie boxes. And those tie boxes are obviously where you're going to route your taper ties or your she bolts through when obviously meeting the tie requirements of this system. And then lastly, I just want to mention it's the center image there, which basically what that's showing you are the dadu holes. So the dadu holes on SymPly are circular. They're a little under 1.5 inches size-wise. And those dadu holes are what enable SymPly to easily connect to some of our other Symons forming systems. All right, so speaking of that, that's where we're going to transition next, which is into SymPly compatibility. So as I mentioned, SymPly is 100% compatible with our well-known Steel-Ply system. And it's a very simple process to undertake. The Steel-Ply system, if you listened in last week, as you know, its primary method of attachment for its key component parts is 2 interlocking wedge bolts. Okay, so essentially in the case of connecting a Steel-Ply panel to a SymPly panel, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to route one of those wedge bolts horizontally through the dadu slots and dadu holes of the 2 different panel types. When SymPly was engineered, it was designed to that, slightly under 1.5 inch dadu hole size to accommodate these wedge bolts. So we could make this direct connection to our Steel-Ply system. Okay. And then you can see in that image on the far right, kind of the application of this in the field where you're actually seeing that connection between our SymPly and Steel-Ply systems there. All right, so moving along here. So when our engineers designed SymPly, they wanted to make it as compatible with as many of our existing Symons Formon systems as they possibly could. In addition to Steel-Ply, it is also compatible with our soldier beam system, our backbone one-sided wall forming system, and it is compatible as well with our FlexForm radius adjust system. And then lastly, our space lift system, which is used for multi-lift structure type of jobs. All right, so moving here to key component parts. So for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to go a little bit more in depth on a lot of the component parts of the system, but starting with the key component parts, then from there we'll transition to a lot of the accessory hardware. All right, so the key component parts are obviously your panels, your fillers, and then your inside and outside corners. As you can see, our standard offering within the SymPly system gives you 19 different panel dimensional sizes that are available stock, ranging from our smallest panel size, which is essentially a 1 foot by 2 foot panel, all the way up to our largest size, which is a 3 by 8 panel. You can see our standard panel height go in 2 foot increments, starting at 2 feet all the way up to 8 feet tall. Standard widths or lengths of the panels are 12 inches, 18 inches, 24 inches, 30, and 36 inches. So essentially spanning 1 foot, and then from that 1 foot on 6-inch increments up to 3 feet. The panel face sheet that we use. So we use 19/32 thickness plywood. It is high density overlay, otherwise known as HDO plywood. The board itself is actually a 5-layer ply. Fillers. So you have standard 1-inch, 2-inch, and 6-inch filler lengths. Those fillers are also offered in the same height as the panels that we just went over. So 2, 4, 6, and 8 feet options are available. We also have our all steel inside and outside corners available in several different dimensional sizes as well. And you can kind of see a picture of that. It's kind of a small picture, but you can see that in the lower right-hand portion of the slide there. The last thing I want to mention is, when our engineers designed the SymPly system, they designed it to have as many tie-off or connection points for our accessory hardware as possible. And just as an example of that, our largest panel that we offer in the market today is a 3 by 8 panel. And that 3 by 8 panel actually has 63 different tie-off or accessory hardware connection points on it. And the reason I wanted to bring that up last is because it kind of is a good transition or segue to the next item here, which is an OSHA required item. This is your tie-off bracket. This is what your construction crew is going to tie off their safety belts to when they're actually working on the form. And you can see in this 3D model of the part, you can see it has these 2 downward facing prongs or hooks, if you will. And those 2 prongs or hooks are what you're going to insert into the cutouts of those cross members on the panels that I was just talking about. In addition, in the unforeseen circumstance, which would be very, very rare that something like this would happen, but if for some reason one of those downward facing hooks were to fail, you do have a safety stop up there as well, that spring-loaded safety stop you can see in the model there also. And again, this is an OSHA tested and approved part. All right, so moving on to the clamps. So I mentioned I'd give you more detail on the clamps here. So this is obviously, as I mentioned, the primary mechanism of attachment for all the key component parts. We have 2 different clamp options. We have our standard Sym clamp, and then we have an adjustable Sym clamp. The standard Sym clamp is placed vertically at the aligning cross member joints of the panels. Okay, when attaching 2 panels, it is secured into place by utilizing a carpenter's hammer, and you're essentially just going to bat down that flat portion at the top of those pictures you see on your slide there, and that's essentially what's going to tighten and secure that connection between the 2 panels that you're seeking to connect. Okay. The second type is the adjustable clamp, which actually has 4 inches of extension, and obviously when you would want to use this is when you're trying to attach a panel to like a plastic or lumber filler. Obviously, you're still limited to fillers that cannot exceed 4 inches, but that's kind of sort of when you would want to use the adjustable clamp. So this next piece here that I kind of want to bring up is some of the safe working loads. So the standard clamp has a safe working load of 5,000 pounds with a 2-to-1 safety factor. And what that essentially means, because you'll hear me reference that on several slides here going forward, basically you have the safe working load, and then you have what's called an ultimate load capacity. And that factor of safety is just kind of a way of denoting how we're getting to that ultimate load capacity. So in the case of this standard clamp, if it has a 5,000 pound safe working load and it has a 2-to-1 factor of safety, that means the ultimate load is 10,000 pounds. I just wanted to kind of explain what you're seeing there with some of those numbers. So the safe working load, the adjustable clamp's a little bit lower. It's 3,100 pounds, but it does have the same factor of safety. And you can see both clamps are pretty lightweight. The standard clamp weighs just over 3.5 pounds. All right. Moving on to tie options. So your tie options with the system is you've got 2 different tie options that support 2 different load capacities. So you've got a 15 millimeter threaded lower capacity taper tie, which has a safe working load of 18,760 pounds at a 2-to-1 factor of safety. And those taper ties are secured to your SymPly formwork utilizing what you see on the slide there, which is the 15 millimeter plate and wing nut, which is that upper image of the 3 you see sort of in the bottom right-hand corner there. You also have a higher capacity 50 kip taper tie available as well. It's rated to a 50,000 pound ultimate load. The safe working load on this part is 25,000 pounds. As far as connecting that one, you're going to connect the 50 kip taper tie to the rest of the SymPly formwork utilizing the 50 kip bearing washer and the 50 kip contour nut. Okay. Additionally, you can see that we also have 15 millimeter she bolts and 50 kip she bolts available for use in this system as well. Typically the tie method, you're going to use it most of the time it's personal preference, but sometimes your job site requirements might dictate what tie method you can actually use. Just one quick example is if the wall thickness is thicker than the longest taper tie option that we have available, in that particular circumstance, you might need to use a she bolt. But really, it just comes down to a matter of personal preference by the crew working on the job site. All right, so now we'll move into some of the accessory hardware. Some of this hardware you'll use more frequently than others, starting here with the walkway bracket and the guardrail post. So the walkway bracket, as you can kind of see in that picture on the far right, it can accommodate 3 2x10 lumber planks, and it has basically a weight capacity to it of 500 pounds. It has a 4-to-1 factor of safety with it, by the way, as well. The guardrail post slides into that end pocket. You can see that end pocket on both of those images there. And that guardrail post actually has 2 upward, I would call them upward facing L-shaped notches in it. And that's where you'll place your safety lumber to create sort of that fall backwards protection on the job site. And the 2 walkway brackets, so if you have 2 walkway brackets, you can space them out a maximum of 8 feet from center to center. And again, this is another OSHA tested and approved part. So the next logical item to get into here is your fall forward bracket. So if your walkway bracket is positioned on the formwork 42 inches or less from the top of the form, then you're going to need a fall forward bracket on the opposite side, okay? And basically this fall forward bracket has the same kind of integrated hardware similar to the walkway bracket that you just saw, but one difference you'll see here is the post pocket is actually angled at 15 degrees. And what that does is that helps to prevent any kind of interference, or just basically keeps it out of the way in the event that the construction crew working on the form is actually pouring the concrete by bucket. The walkway bracket, or excuse me, the fall forward bracket does actually have a slightly lower weight capacity. It's actually 200 pounds. And the factor of safety on the fall forward bracket is 4-to-1. Okay, so next up is our lifting bracket. This was engineered and designed to straddle, as you can see on that larger picture there, to straddle the vertical cross members of the panel. It connects with that T-spring bolt that you can kind of see towards the bottom of the component part there in those images. It weighs a little under 10 pounds, and it has a 2,000-pound safe working load and a 5-to-1 factor of safety. But basically with this part, 2 lifting brackets can support actually lifting about 400 square feet of gang, of SymPly gang at the job site, okay? All right, so here's your stacking clamp. So the stacking clamp is used to stiffen and align gangs during the picking and placement process. Essentially, this part ensures that there isn't any kind of lateral movement of the SymPly gang or any kind of shifting off center when you're utilizing your cranes to lift and set and place. When you're utilizing this system in a kind of a gang form application. You see the reference on the slide. It says it replaces 6 parts in one. Essentially, just what that means is it's replacing 4 T-head sym bolts, a SymWhaler, and a J-hook, which I believe are the next items here that we're going to talk about. Yeah, okay. So here's your SymWhalers and your T-head sym bolts. So the SymWhalers are available in 3 different lengths. You have a 5-foot, a 10-foot, and a 13-foot option. You can see their respective weights there listed on the slide. Essentially, the SymWhaler acts very much just like the stacking clamp in that it supports gang alignment and ensures the gang stays stable and properly aligned during the picking and placement process. That T-head sym bolt, that's actually the mechanism that attaches the SymWhaler to the rest of the SymPly formwork. Okay. All right. Filler angles. So filler angles, since Steel-Ply and SymPly, as we mentioned earlier on, are 100% compatible with one another, we actually utilize the Steel-Ply filler angles within our SymPly forming system. Okay, and you can see they're connected in the same method as the panel-to-panel connection between Steel-Ply and SymPly, just utilizing those interlocking wedge bolts. Okay, and basically what these filler angles do is they allow the contractors and the construction crew at the site to create custom fillers to fill in some of those gaps in the formwork where they need to, utilizing 3/4 inch plywood. So that's when you would kind of need to utilize a filler angle with this system. All right, so some of the additional accessory hardware available, you have a top tie bracket, which is typically used in dry tie applications. You can see it's got a 7,000-pound capacity associated with it. We have a tie down bracket, which helps to resist upload lifts from battered wall type applications. It has, again, 7,000 pounds of uplift resistance associated with that bracket. Next up there, you can see there's the turnbuckle bracket and the ratchet turnbuckle. These are used with your stripping corners and stripping core formwork. They also attach to the SymPly formwork, utilizing those very similar spring-loaded connections that we've talked about several times already with like the tie-off bracket and the lift bracket as well. So SymPly panels, or I'm sorry, stripping panels. So those are made of 2 beveled forms. They allow for easy stripping away from one another. They're most useful typically between gangs, blasters, or inside corners. Then you got the stripping corners there as well. These are all steel in their construction. It's basically a 3-piece assembly that bolts together through the sides, and they're manufactured at a 45-degree angle relative to the form face. And then the last couple I've got on here is the aligner brackets. The aligner brackets are what enable you to connect a lot of the plumbing hardware that you might need for the SymPly system. And some of those would be like your pipe form aligner and your pier cap brace. The pipe form aligners is just another mechanism of keeping the the form aligned vertically once it's at the job site and lifted up into place and has been set in place. And then you've also got pure cap races that can support any kind of additional load bearing support you might need up to 3,200 pounds. All right, so this last site here, I just want to make sure you guys are all aware there's a lot of information available, and in this 30 minutes, there's only so much information we can get to. So we have a ton of additional resources available on DaytonSphere.com. Just go to the forming tab, click on SymPly. It will take you to the SymPly landing page. And on that landing page, you're going to find numerous assets. You'll find brochures, which go over a lot of the high-level system features and benefits that I highlighted here today. You've got ID posters, which do a really good job of breaking out all the various component parts and letting you see visually what they look like, you know, kind of what their Dayton Superior part code number is in case you need to order them, as well as they give you the products or the component part weights. We've also got safety posters, and those safety posters go over all the safe working loads and ultimate load capacities and factors of safety, all that information that I highlighted on the parts that I was able to go over with you all here in this webinar. We've got application guides. These application guides are great sources to kind of walk you through a basic setup and installation process of this system at the job site. And then lastly, we've got technical data sheets, and these data sheets are good because they kind of give you just a little bit more detail on kind of the functionality of a lot of the different component parts within our SymPly system. All right. So with that being said, are there any questions today?
That was really great, Ryan. A lot of good information, details. I'll let you guys put in your questions into the chat. I do have a request to send a copy of the presentation. Unfortunately, we don't send those outside of the organization, but you're more than welcome to download a copy of what you're listening to right now and present that. Okay, so remember, all of these are online for all the ones that we do every Tuesday. There's always a different subject and different subject matter experts. Like we said before, we have recorded this for your availability on the training site. A little bit later on, I'll send out a note with that link for you so that you can just know right where to get it and have it. Any other questions? We do have one. All right. Can I use she-bolts with the Steel-Ply system?
With the Steel-Ply system, I do not believe you can, no.
Okay, thank you, Ryan.
Yep, you have S-panel ties and X-flat ties are the primary tie systems for Steel-Ply.
Okay. Anything else? All right, well, again, thanks for joining, and I hope that you have a wonderful, happy Tuesday. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Bye.